Prabhupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Stotra Srimad. His Divine Grace C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Jai Dvaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. वृंदावन धाम की जय, मायापुर धाम की जय, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, गंगा माई की जय, यमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, संवेद भक्त वृंद की जय, निताई गौ प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimad Gopal Krishna Goswami Niti Namane Prabhupada Sahitam Ya Prakasa Samviti Raja Pracharan Kitvan Sadhu Bhavat Padaya Te Namah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. We are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration, Chapter number 11, Summary Description of the Mahapurusha, Text 1. Shri Shaunaka Vacha Athemam Artham Prichhamo Bhavantam Bahuvittamam Samasta Tantra Radhante Bhavan Bhagavata Tattvavet. Translation by disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Sri Shaunaka said, O Sutta, you are the best of learned men and a great devotee of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, we now inquire from you about the definitive conclusion of all Tantra scriptures. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Thank you all for coming for this Bhagavatam class today. We are starting a new chapter. And we can see that this chapter is about the description of the Mahapurusha. In fact, in this chapter, there will be knowledge about Mahapurusha and expansions of sun in each month. There's going to be knowledge about the major limbs of the Supreme Lord, the secondary limbs, his weapons, and even his garments. And of course, there will be knowledge about practical service on becoming immortal. Now, in this chapter, summary description of the Mahapurusha, we will see Krishna manifest in the form of sun. And there will be description of sun god in many features. And of course, Krishna manifests his potency of time as the sun and how he travels. So this is all we will learn from this chapter. Now, when we read this very first verse, we can see that Shaunaka Rishi, even though he has heard the whole Bhagavatam, he still wants to hear more from Sutta Goswami. He says, therefore we now inquire from you. Inquiry is very important. That's what we learned in Bhagavad Gita also, right? Tat vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Prashna, inquiry, to ask questions. So the more questions we ask, the more knowledge we get. And Prabhupada says that we should hear from devotees of Krishna and we should hear in association, and that will help us increase our devotion to Krishna. That is what we do. We've been doing for almost 8 or 10 years. We've been hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Canto 1, and finally we have reached Canto 12. And I would like to thank all of you. Because of you, I was also able to read Srimad Bhagavatam. And here in this chapter, we will see how devotion, when we associate with devotees and we hear and we speak Bhagavatam, the devotion increases. And the goal is to increase devotion. So that finally we can become qualified to go back to Godhead. Now, if you see verse number 2, he says, Shaunaka Rishi is continuing to Sutta Goswami, says, all good fortune to you. Please explain to us who are very eager to learn. That is the first qualification. There has to be eagerness to learn. In fact, in the very first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we learned that the qualification to hear Bhagavatam is attentiveness. And attentiveness will only come when one is eager to hear. Now, supposing if I am not eager to see anybody, nothing is going to change, right? It doesn't matter what's going on around. I have to be eager to do something. So here he's saying, who are very eager to learn. What? The process of Kriya Yoga practiced through regulated worship of the Transcendental Lord, the husband of the goddess of fortune. Please also explain how the Lord's devotees conceive of his limbs, associates, weapons, and ornaments in terms of particular material representations. By expertly worshipping the Supreme Lord, a mortal can attain immortality. You see? So they are very eager to hear about definitive truth. About what? About material creation, the specifics of it. And Shaunaka Rishi knows that this all knowledge that we are going to receive is going to be authentic. He also wants to know the process, not just knowledge, but the process. Like Bhagavad Gita gives us knowledge, but it also gives us how to apply it practically in our day-to-day life, right? Activities, so that we can achieve the supreme absolute truth. So here they also want to know about Lord's limbs, his weapons and his garments. So you see, we can see the scriptures, they are giving definitive absolute truth. They're giving definitive knowledge. It's not just random. There is knowledge about everything about Krishna, about what he wears, what he looks like, right? About his ornaments, and here about his limbs also, right? His weapons, everything. So just like everyone wants real knowledge, they want a conclusion. So we can see Shaunaka Rishi, he also wants to know, and of course he knows it already, but he's still inquiring for our benefit. Because if he doesn't inquire, Sutta Goswami is not going to answer, and then we will not get the knowledge. And first of all, we see in the next verse, Sutta Goswami, he is offering obeisances to his spiritual master. That's very, very important, because it is because of the mercy of Guru that we can get Krishna. We cannot go directly to Krishna. We have to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. So you must have noticed that before we start a class, we offer our obeisances to our spiritual master, because Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya. Chakshu means Chakshu Unmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We offer obeisances because he, with the torchlight of knowledge, he has removed our ignorance, right? So he's offering his obeisances, and he's saying that yes, he's going to give the description as given in the Vedas. That means he's not going to speculate. That is the beauty of parampara, disciplic succession, because in the disciplic succession, all the disciples, they give as it is knowledge, with no addition, subtraction. The authenticity of the data is maintained. Here also we see that he's saying that he is going to repeat from the Vedas. Prabhupada says that when we preach, we should have knowledge, of course, before we preach. But when we preach, we must quote from the scriptures. We should quote some verses from the scriptures, because when we quote from the scriptures, the person who is hearing will understand that this is authentic knowledge. It is not just speculation. It's not what I think in my opinion according to me. No, no speculation at all. So it's important that while preaching, we also not just randomly preach, but we also quote from the scriptures. Now, to do that, our mind has to be engaged in devotional service, right? Only then sadhana bhakti, right? That sadhana bhakti. If the mind is not attached in devotional service, we should understand sadhana bhakti hasn't begun also. You see, the mind, like just like we heard, he said, I am eager to hear. Like that, we have to be eager to perform devotional service, right? But then one may say, oh, the mind, it just keeps wandering here and there, what to do. But we have to pull the mind back to Krishna, right? With senses, we are encountering material things. I want this, I want that, let me get this, let me get that. But we are not, with our material senses, we are not encountering Krishna's pastimes, right? Krishna's pastimes are there, but we don't have ruchi, we don't have a taste for it. Why? Because our senses are conditioned. They are just like they say iodized and all like that. They are materialized, but we need to make them Krishnized. So if we think about what we encounter with material senses and mind, then we will not be able to become really Krishna conscious. Now, excuse me, Shaunaka Rishi is asking that how he can see Krishna's angas, his limbs and weapons and all that, you see. Now, to be able to even understand that, we need guidance from a spiritual master. Only Guru and Krishna can give us the intelligence. What is that verse in Bhagavad Gita chapter 10? Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam. Buddhi means intelligence. Krishna says, I will give the intelligence by which one can understand me. So to understand Krishna, we need intelligence from Krishna. So now here we see Sutta Goswami, he says that he's now going to speak from the Vedas. And of course, he also says that beginning from lotus born Brahma. That is how he's going to begin. Verse number 5. The universal form Virat of the personality of Godhead includes the 9 basic elements of creation, starting with the unmanifest nature and their subsequent transformations. Once this universal form is instilled with consciousness, the 3 planetary systems become visible within it. Purport is very nice. The 9 basic elements of creation are Prakriti, Sutra, Mahatattva, false ego, and the 5 subtle perceptions. The transformations are the 11 senses and the 5 gross material elements. Now this particular verse is very technical, if you can see. Now he's talking about 9 basic elements. Prakriti, we all know, is material nature. Sutra is actually the material propensity. Now we have to understand these words in reference to the context. Prabhupada has talked about, he talks about each verse in reference to the context. So here, Sutra means material propensity. Mahatattva, we all know, is total material energy. Then there is false ego. And then he says 5 subtle perceptions. What is that? Right? Have we heard about it? But there is a nice book called Renunciation Through Wisdom by Srila Prabhupada. And in that he mentions that anything transcendental to material nature is inconceivable. Right? It's inconceivable, just like Krishna is inconceivable. and thus cannot be grasped through mundane arguments. Oh, in my opinion, according to me, no, it's not possible. Therefore, one should not try to understand transcendental subjects in this way. Without the mercy of the Supreme Lord, such subjects are incomprehensible. Even if one spends many years researching them, right? It's beyond our conception. Srila Prabhupada says that anything that is beyond our conception, we must accept authority. We must accept the words of one who knows it, one who knows the truth, right? Chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, verse 34, when it says, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadyakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshinaha. Tattva darshina is the one who has seen the truth, and that is a bona fide spiritual master. So you see, when there is anything beyond our conception, then we should approach a bona fide spiritual master who's a tattva darshinaha. Right? So researching also is not going to help. See, beyond the sensual realm lies the indirect subtle perceptions. So he's talking about 5 subtle perceptions, right? So we need to understand beyond the sensual realm, we are always operating on the sensual platform, right? With our senses. It's beyond lies the indirect subtle perceptions, which need to be properly understood. But they can be understood properly only if one sees their relationship to the inconceivable, transcendental, absolute truth, which is Krishna, right? Krishna is inconceivable. So we can understand these subtle perceptions if we have a relationship with the Supreme Lord. So without seeing this connection, one will find all discussion of these subtle perceptions to be like, beating the shaft for the grain, right? Have you seen? You beat the shaft, beat. What is going to come out? Nothing is going to come out because it's just the shaft. There is no grain inside. So our trying to understand these subtle perceptions without having a relationship with the Supreme Lord is not really going to help us. Then he talks about 5 gross elements, which are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Then he talks about 11 senses. When you read the purport, you see all this, right? So what are those 11 senses? Now those are 5 knowledge acquiring senses, which is the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch, right? Then there are 5 working senses, which is the voice, legs, hands, anus, and genitals. And what is the 11th one? That is the mind. So you see, he's talking about these 9 basic elements of creation, and then the 11 senses and the 5 gross material elements. So all this he's talking about the universal form of Lord. All this is included in the universal form of the Supreme Lord. Now let's go to verse number 6. This is a representation of the Supreme Lord as a universal person in which the earth is his feet, the sky his navel, the sun his eyes, the wind his nostrils, the demigod of procreation his genitals, death his anus, and the moon his mind. The heavenly planets are his head, the directions his ears, and the demigods protecting the various planets his many arms. The god of death is his eyebrows, shame his lower lip, greed his upper lip, delusion his smile, and moonshine his teeth. While the trees are the Almighty Purusha's bodily hairs, and the clouds the hair on his head. What a beautiful description, right? So what does this show? This is not just theoretical knowledge. This is something that we can visualize. This is something that we can meditate upon. That it is so very important, right? So very important to understand everything is within Krishna. Everything comes from Krishna. Very, very important. And this verse shows us that the various aspects of creations are sustained by the limbs of the universal body of Krishna, right? Everything is within Krishna. Everything. So we can, so I mean, of course, it's not that when we look at Krishna and then when we see his arms, we say, oh, demigod. And when we see his hair, or when we think of his mind, we think moon. Yes, that is nice. This is knowledge to understand. But what we concentrate on is the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, because we need shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, right? In fact, Prabhupada also explains that when we go to the temple, when we go for darshan, we start first with the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, and then gradually we see his beautiful transcendental form, and then finally come to his beautiful lotus face and with his beautiful eyes, and this is how we meditate, right? Let's go to verse number 9. Just as one can determine the dimensions of an ordinary person of this world by measuring his various limbs, one can determine the dimensions of the Mahapurusha by measuring the arrangement of the planetary systems within his universal form. Can you imagine? The planetary systems are also within the universal body of the Supreme Lord, right? It's good to have this knowledge, but the devotees, Prabhupada says, they do not meditate on the universal form of the Lord, right? We learned in Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna also is afraid of the universal form. He says, no, 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 please, please, you change back to the Shyama Sundar form, which I like so much. So devotees also are attracted by the Shyama Sundar form of the Supreme Lord. Next verse. Upon his chest, the almighty unborn personality of Godhead bears the Kaustuba gem, which represents the pure spirit soul, along with the Shrivats mark, which is a direct manifestation of this gem's expansive effulgence. See, Srimad Bhagavatam is so beautiful. It gives us every detail about Krishna, right? Supposing, a man is looking to get married, he wants looking for a girl, right? He wants the full description of the girl. Besides, of course, how much she is earning, that is, right, that is the point. But what does she look like? How long is her hair? Is it curly? Is it soft like silk? How beautiful are the eyes and the nose? All details. When the boy gets all the details, then is able to visualize, oh, my future wife will be so beautiful, right? The description helps. So here description is given so that it helps us to get attached to Krishna. It helps us to love him with full of devotion and worship, right? So all this is there. This is that beautiful Shama Sundar form, which all the particular details are being given in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada also says, in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, why did Arjuna want to, see the universal form? Why did he want to see the Vishnu form? And then why did he finally ask him to change back to the Shyamasundar form? Simple reason. Because there may be some people in the future in Kali Yuga who will claim to be God. They may say, I am God. Yes, if you're God, then show us your universal form, right? If you're God, then show us that you have the Kaustuba gem, that you have a Srivatsa mark. Show us that your eyes are like lotus feet, right? There was also one person who claimed to be Krishna, but that person had a toothache. Prabhupada says Krishna doesn't have a toothache. Does not. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? So here all the descriptions are given for us to not only have more attraction towards Krishna, but also to be able to identify who is God and who is not God. So there's precise description in the scriptures. It's not speculation. Prabhupada says that these scriptures, they are the mother who is giving us knowledge about the Supreme Father, right? It's only the mother who knows who the real Father is. So similarly, the scriptures who are like the mother, they are revealing about the Supreme Father of ours. Next verse. His flower garland is his material energy comprising various combinations of the modes of nature. His yellow garment is the Vedic meters, and a sacred thread, the syllable Om, composed of three sounds. In the form of his two shark-shaped earrings, the Lord carries the processes of Sankhya and Yoga, and his crown bestowing fearlessness on the inhabitants of all the worlds is a supreme position of Brahmaloka. Wow. See? Now, if we read the next few verses, we will get more information. Ananta, the Lord's sitting place, is the unmanifest face of material nature, and the Lord's lotus throne is the mode of goodness endowed with religion and knowledge. The club the Lord carries is the chief element, prana, incorporating the potencies of sensory, mental, and physical strength. His excellent conch shell is the element water, his Sudarshan disc the element fire, and his sword pure as the sky the element ether. His shield embodies the mode of ignorance, his bow named Charm, time, and his arrow filled quiver the working sensory organ. See? He's also talking about the conch shell and all those elements, right? I was listening to this lecture where he was saying Krishna has these symbols, right? Conch, lotus, club, and disc, right? These are Lord Vishnu's symbols. So in the material world, first Krishna blows the conch shell to wake us up, right? There's that beautiful Vaishnava bhajan, Jeev Jago, right? Gaura Chandra Bole. Lord Gauranga is saying, wake up, sleeping soul, right? You're sleeping in the lap of Maya now, wake up. So with the conch shell, he wakes us up with the Bhagavad Gita, with Srimad Bhagavatam, with devotees, with temples, with kirtan. All this Krishna gives us in the form of conch shell to wake us up. But if we don't listen, then what does he do? He tries his club to hit us. Right? With his club, he hits us, and then we still don't wake up. We get hit, Maya strikes us, this problem, that problem, but we still don't wake up. Then he has to use the Sudarshan Chakra, right? Then that is the what is that called? Real strike, right? And we still don't want to listen. He said, no, this material world is such a beautiful place. I know I'm suffering, but the suffering will go away soon. Very soon it'll be gone. And then I'll be happy again. And then it's going to be a bed of roses. No. Only when we surrender to the Supreme Lord, only when we surrender to the instructions of the Lord, He'll give us a lotus flower. The very last symbol that is there. He'll give us that, his love. He'll give us his care. He'll give us his compassion. He'll give us his mercy. So it is up to us. It is not up to Krishna. Krishna is giving us what we want. He's just fulfilling our desires. Prabhupada says, if we desire to sleep in Maya, Krishna will say, Tathastu, sleep in Maya, no problem. But if we want to wake up with knowledge, we want to be conscious of Krishna, then Krishna will again say Tathastu. He's going to help us. Verse number 16. His arrows are said to be the senses, and his chariot is the active, forceful mind. His external appearance is the subtle objects of perception, and the gestures of his hands are the essence of all purposeful activity. The sun globe is the place where the Supreme Lord is worshipped. Spiritual initiation is a means of purification for the spirit soul, and rendering devotional service to the personality of Godhead is the process for eradicating all one's sinful reactions.